Today I'll be doing a presentation in conjunction with the release of my new book, Cyberattack, Cybercrime, Cyber Warfare and Cyber Complacency. If you do get the opportunity to come and see me do it in person, I promise I'll be a lot more effective than I am on these YouTube videos. My approach is much more interactive with the crowd. I miss not seeing you. Why did I write the book? Well, quite frankly, I've got quite a bit of experience in real cyber attacks and cyber crime. Much of what we do in cyber security these days is really just enterprise security, enterprise governance, and because we like to sex things up in a marketing way, we prepend the word cyber in front of it. Now that is a bit more damaging than you would really suspect. It detracts budgets from real research projects, and I truly believe, and certainly the case with European and UK governments, allows us to pretend that we're doing a lot more to protect the general public than we really are. So please take the opportunity to read the book if you get an opportunity. I'm sure you'll find it fulfilling at a business level and at a technical level. I've tried to span both these sort of genres, and I think you'll find it valuable. But there was another reason, apart from being frustrated by the herds of liberal arts graduates that have never worked at an ISP and never installed a DDoS mitigation system or a firewall, that come on the TV virtually every other day to talk about the mysticism of cyber security. And that really was a major driving force, I must admit. One of the reasons was that I thought I could actually put something else not only back into the field of security, which I feel I've done in many other ways, but I recently, as some of you may know, spent a lot of time in hospital, and spent about 2 weeks in a coma, spent about 4 weeks in an intensive care unit after an industrial injury. And what I did do is I was shocked and I was horrified. A lot of really good medics and surgeons took care of me and actually brought me back from clinical death. What I found is, because I didn't fit into a particular box, like many people that are ill, I found that post-care support very, very poor. For a long time, and I still do live my life in pain, and there is very, very little support for someone that doesn't have kidney damage or cancer or can be put in the box. People go through an extensive care, and people that spend a prolonged time in an intensive care unit will almost certainly suffer post-traumatic stress syndrome. In my case, I suffered post-sepsis syndrome, and my doctors actually had never even heard of it. I carry around a letter explaining to people what it means and why they should be interested. Now the fact is for those that know me, I'm very pig-headed, and if people tell me I'm dying, I'm going to sit right up and get on with life. But for many people, these damaging conditions means that they have to stop working, and that's a crying shame in this day and age. So I will be donating the majority of the proceeds from this book to the UK Sepsis Society, the Sepsis Trust, and ICU Steps. That's assuming that any of you guys dig into your pockets and donate it. If you hate me and don't want to buy the book, donate to the Sepsis Trust anyway, please. Now on to DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. In this presentation, I'll be covering what a DDoS attack is, and I'll also be going into some detail of the various methods that are used to protect against them, and many of them are not as effective as you might believe. Now, The word DDoS has been bandied about the industry for many years now. Now, unlike malware or hacking, if you go to most boards of directors, they will either believe that DDoS doesn't affect them, they will either believe that they have some kind of protection, or in the majority of cases, they'll believe that it doesn't impact them and it's someone else's job. It is for anyone that relies on an e-commerce channel for a substantial amount of revenue, seemingly a no-brainer. Everyone should have some level of DDoS protection because the cost of it is greater than not doing anything, obviously. But usually the cost of it is minuscule compared to the successful e-commerce channel that many corporations have. Yet you'll find that when you do the deep dive with either the technologists or the people that are ultimately accountable, the board of directors, the CIO, the MD, etc., etc., they have no protection. And it is an extremely hard sell for some reason, and that's mainly because people don't understand it. This presentation hopes to address that. Now let's do a deep dive on a DDoS attack. Now this is a slide we'll be using throughout the presentation, and it shows a pretty typical representation of an e-commerce situation. You have your web servers and they will front up an e-commerce platform with databases and transaction servers, Java, what have you. In front of that there'll be load balancers and a firewall. Connecting the firewall and your e-commerce platform to the internet, you'll have a perimeter router, and that will connect via a local loop onto the internet, and the internet will connect you to all your customers, all your channels, and like the saying goes, there are good guys and there are bad guys out there on the internet. Now, if you've sized your e-commerce platform correctly, there should be no issue and it should function as expected. And many people, as you know, are very keen for the e-commerce channel to be successful. They're becoming more and more significant for many businesses. But as we've said before, there are good and there are bad out there. And the bad takes the form of botnets. The botnets are constructed out of normal PCs, typically that haven't either been patched or don't have AV software on there, and that allows malevolent parties to exploit them and use Trojan loaders to load effectively whatever they want. And in the case of a DDoS, that will be a DDoS attack engine. So a malevolent party, usually hacktivists or organised crime, or even in cyber warfare, unfriendly governments, can send commands to this collection of unprotected PCs that have been, if you like, possessed, and in the case of a DDoS, they will start sending a flood of packets. Now it will ramp up quite quickly. It will start off with hundreds of packets, and then it will go to hundreds of thousands, potentially even millions. And the effect to your website is that it will rapidly exceed their capacity to handle it. The website itself will lock up, often it will fall over, and this will take seconds. Your firewalls are not DDoS protection tools. They probably will not withstand the attack. And even if you have a top of the range Nokia, Checkpoint, or Cisco ASA or Juniper, quite often we find that their translate tables or their connection tables fill up in minutes and they are unable to service your customers. Yet the ISP, because they're sized for a significantly greater number of packets than your platform, will continue to function. So you probably will not even get notified by them. and it will probably be a little while until you know that you're being attacked. And of course, this has a serious business impact. The bottom line is your website is down, your e-commerce platform is down. At a business level, no money coming in. Now in the book we describe various formulas and calculations to work out how much money this costs you. But at the very basic terms, you can think in terms of lost revenue, lost customers, increased competition because your competitors will be able to stay up when you are down. And denial of services go on for prolonged periods of time. They can last from several hours to several weeks, and it is very unusual for them just to be one-offs. They will repeat. Ultimately, the customer sees your site as down. Now there are some legacy solutions to DDoS attacks, and many ISPs will offer you a solution that they call remote triggered black holing. Now the full configurations and how-tos are provided in the book, but at a business level, and the book is also aimed at a business level as well, these solutions were developed before e-platforms and the internet was a major channel for business. So rather than being a mitigation for you and your business against this attack, these solutions tend to be mitigations for the ISP and allow the ISP to operate unhindered while you get attacked. And in the following slides I will demonstrate exactly the consequence of this to your business. So let's run through the black holing process and what it buys you. During an attack, your normal web traffic will gradually cease to pass. Your web servers will fall over. At that time, you have to call up the ISP, or maybe if you're lucky, one of your customers will call up the ISP. The NOC will issue a BGP update that will reroute all traffic into what's known as the bit bucket. The bit bucket is a null route. It basically steals all the traffic, good or bad, from your web server and nulls it, deletes it. The net effect is that you've gone down. You've achieved, with the help of the ISP, what the botnet and all its zombies could not achieve. Your site has gone down. Now how is this a mitigation? How is this a protection? Well, it isn't. So black holing actually leaves you in a worse state than you would have been without it. It actually takes your website down. And many people that I speak to believe that they have DDoS protection in the form of black holing. They don't realise that it's not really a mitigation for them, it's a mitigation for the ISP. It leaves you proper mullered. You've got no business, you've got no cash coming in. Worse still, because you may have actually talked about this with your ISP and they may have informed you what black holing is and you didn't really understand it, you may have actually claimed to suppliers, you may have claimed to other business partners, or worse still, your board and your managing director, that you are covered when it comes to DDoS. The number of people that we speak to that believe that they're either protected by their firewalls, protected by something that the ISP does, and it actually resolves to this type of mitigation that provides you no protection to your revenue stream whatsoever. The end user experience is exactly the same. Now, there are a lot of DDoS solutions that are available on the market. Many of them work on site. Now, these can have their place, but on their own, they generally cannot provide a full-scale protection against a large internet botnet. They're designed to complement other types of mitigations. Certainly what's true is a lot of people do believe that their firewall and their corporate IPS IDS solution will protect them from a full DDoS attack. Though that is completely not true. DDoS attacks are very brute force orientated, and whatever the admirable qualities of an IDS IPS, they are designed to protect against atomic and fairly complex attacks, whereas a DDoS mitigator is primarily designed to protect against a brute force attack. If you want a comparison, imagine a jeweler's screwdriver as compared to a sledgehammer. The DDoS mitigator is a very robust, high throughput device, and it just simply doesn't have that granular protection that an IDS system or a firewall needs to protect against one lethal packet. Whereas the firewall might not have the strength to protect against millions and millions of fairly harmless packets by themselves, but deadly when applied in the hundreds of thousands. So if we see our very familiar schematic now, when our local traffic works through, we have an inline DDoS mitigator, and it passes traffic all the time, and that in itself has some disadvantages. If you're ever run a SOC or a large firewall team, as I've done, you'll find that every time there's an issue with an application or a routing device, it always gets pointed to the firewall as the problem. If you're running an IDS or an IPS, an intrusion prevention system, that reputation is even more so, and so you're constantly fighting against false positives. And the DDoS mitigators, when employed online, will suffer from the same thing. People will accuse them of having latency problems, cutting off certain types of traffic. However, their main job is to protect against an attack, and they have a significant flaw when we do look at it from this point of view. When we look at it from this point of view, we can see that the attack traffic is now going through, and the DDoS on-site DDoS mitigator will start cleaning it. However, once the local loop and the CEPE routers, i.e. that router that is the last hop between you, the customer site, and that router that is on the customer site just before the DDoS mitigator, when they get saturated, it doesn't matter how proficient the device is and what high throughput it has, it will not be able to clean the traffic because it simply can't see the traffic. We need something that is in the cloud. We want to use the DDoS has its capability because it is in the cloud, and we want to use that strength against it. We want to use the strength of the cloud to defeat the DDoS attack. And so again, we see that the protection offered by an on-site mitigation system may not be any better than not having one at all if you've got particularly small local loops or small routers. And many ISPs cut corners when it comes to the size of links and the size of local devices. It's only a few £100 in many cases, and so you can quite often find, however good the device is or the extra option you add to some a UTM device, that you will end up with the same result exactly as if you didn't have it, i.e. your site's down. Now, up until now it's been all doom and gloom, but there are systems that work. There are very good systems that provide you adequate cover, and if you have bought an on-site system, not to worry. They really will come into their own if they're augmented with a cloud-based system. But you need a cloud-based system, as we've just seen, to handle the bandwidth. Move the attack traffic away from your local loop. And now I'm going to start using the buzzword, or the buzz acronym if you like, IDMS, Internet DDoS Mitigation System. It's another acronym you've got to learn, and as you should know, that because the security industry doesn't have much science, we fill it full of buzzwords. So how do these work? You have a cloud-based system now. It sits in a farm, a IDMS farm, a farm of mitigators, and it's situated in a place where there's plentiful fibre, plentiful bandwidth. So when the attack starts, you will have DDoS detectors, or indeed your NOC might actually notice the increase in throughput as the attack traffic starts hammering your website. The detector, or the NOC, or the SOC if you're going for a managed security provider, will send an attack notification to the routers. Now this is very, very similar to the BGP reroute that we talked about with the black holing. And this will reroute all traffic to the scrubber farm. The scrubber farm uses various filters, various attack mitigations, various redirects to clean the traffic, and then via an alternate route passes mainly clean traffic, as you'll see there's some malevolent traffic still there, back to your web farm. These days modern infrastructures are so powerful that a few bad traffic packets won't impact them at all. The beauty of this situation is, because the farm is situated in the core of the internet, it's not going to flood a local loop. It's going to be in a place that is actually got oodles of bandwidth. And so this is the preferred method with dealing with DDoS mitigation, and the net result in most cases is that your traffic is routed normally, and bazinga, you're open for business as usual. And when you're open for business, your internet channel's open for business, that means you have revenue. So to close this portion of the presentation, I'm going to sum up the advantages of a internet DDoS mitigation system in the cloud. They are insulated from local loop capacity issues because they are located in the very core of the cloud. There aren't any bandwidth constraints there, and so they won't be frustrated by lack of network capacity. They take advantage of a redirect technology, very similar to normal BGP redirects. In fact, they often use normal BGP redirects, can use DNS or other technologies, but typically BGP redirect is common. And so they do not impact the normal operation of your application. Because they're in the core of the internet, of the cloud if you like, they can be shared, and this provides a business level advantage. They provide an ideal platform for a service model, and therefore they can take advantage of economies of scale and expert capabilities of the organisations that might run such a service, like technical knowledge, creation of ad hoc capabilities, signatures, etc., and technical advice to you as a customer trying to run an e-commerce platform, and can be augmented by multiple forms of attack detection. You have the NOC that can notice performance figures. You have a helpline for customers. You can use things such as net flow, traffic analysis, and if you look at the book, we provide a number of models for internet probes that are ideal for detecting anomalies in traffic patterns. So we'll move on to talk about what kind of attacks are launched in a DDoS attack. So let's move on to talk about the different types of DDoS attacks you might see. The most common type of DDoS attack you see are direct attacks. These are simple packet floods. Some of them have a twist in the tail, but generally they are basic floods of a stream of packets designed to overwhelm your web server and your firewalls. Typically you might hear people talk about large packet flood, you might hear about a small packet flood, or IP fragments. The most common one you're most likely to see is a TCP SYN flood, and we'll cover this in an in-depth video at a later date. Basically, it's a half-open session, so it uses special memory. It used to be, in the olden days, very disastrous. These days, it's a lot more manageable, but it's still probably the most likely attack you'll see. Most surveys actually see this as by far the most common attack. Other attacks that are similar to this are the TCP reset flood and the Christmas tree flood, but they're not so common, and frankly the TCP SYN flood is probably the one you're most likely to encounter. Other floods that are common as well is a basic UDP flood, typically pointed at port 53 to emulate DNS activity. Most firewalls will be listening to port 53. Often you have DNS servers that are open, so it's guaranteed to get through what little defences you may have against DDoS. ICMP and other data floods are common. Now these may have or may not have spoof packets, and we may cover them as part of the SYN flood presentation. We definitely go into them at some depth in the book. Now, what is becoming more common and is certainly often talked about are reflected attacks, amplified or reflected attacks, and these work by sending a small catalyst packet to a community of servers that will amplify that effect and send it back to the target. The key here is that you have to spoof the source address so that the server that relays it and reflects it and amplifies it will send it to the target of the attack. Now the most common ones you see here are network broadcast attacks, charge-in attacks or other attacks focused on UDP small services, or the one that's really in the paper is a DNS amplification attack. Now we will cover that in some depth in a further YouTube video with the typical animations and shall I say Janitor John approach. We will go into that at great depth. There is also, if you search the libraries, if you're interested in code, there is a program that I've written in C that uses no special libraries, is raw C, and you can see that, download that from Packet Storm on, and it's known as DNS SP query. The last type of flood you might see is the application flood, and these are attacks against your application at the web level, typically aimed at the authentication system, and we will cover them again in great deal in the book and as part of the following YouTube videos. Well, congratulations, you've made it through listening to my voice the whole presentation. Give yourself a pat on the back. As I promised, I've given you the URL for the Sepsis Trust and ICU steps. Please donate. As part of this project, I'm not only writing the book, I've written a number of Android apps that hopefully people will find useful and therefore contribute. And also there's these YouTube videos. Sepsis and the aftermath of any prolonged ICU stay is a very, very a traumatic experience, and like I say, many people aren't as stubborn as me, and they literally have to give up work. More people are affected by it than those that than many of the cancers. Many people suffer post-traumatic stress. Over 16% of them suffer really severe post-traumatic stress, and that's just not acceptable in this day and age. So please donate. As I mentioned, there are Android apps out there that will be updated. There are more videos coming, and there's the book. So if you don't think any of that is of value, please just go straight to the Sepsis Trust and donate directly. Thank you very much. That's the book. These are the other items available as part of this program. And that's me. Thank you for your time.